The wind screamed across the frozen valley, sharp like knives in the night air. Snow fell like ashes, soft but endless, covering everything in white. The stars above were cold, distant, and uncaring, and below them a mother ran through the snow, barefoot, trembling, holding her small child tight against her chest. Her skin was turning pale blue, her feet cut from ice and rocks. She had no coat, no shoes, no food, only her child and the burning hope that someone, anyone, would help them. Her ship had crashed 3 days ago. They were the only survivors, her mate, her crew, all lost in the explosion. Now she was alone on an alien planet, hunted by cold and silence. The child in her arms whimpered too, cold to cry. The mother looked around wildly, her eyes searching for shelter rocks. A cave, anything, but the trees stood still and black. And the snow swallowed her steps. She fell, groaning, her knees hitting hard ground. "No," she whispered in her native tongue. "Not now, not yet." The child coughed, a weak sound. She reached into her clothes, just rags, now unwrapped the last of her sleeves around the child's tiny body. Then she saw the rocks, a pile ahead. She crawled toward them, teeth clattering so loud she couldn't hear her own breath. Behind the rocks, there was a small space, just enough to block the wind. She placed the child down carefully and looked around for dry wood or fuel, but everything was frozen, wet, or buried. She touched her chest, her sleeves, her robe. Then, without thinking twice, she ripped it all off. Every last piece, one by one, she laid her clothes in a small pile. Then she lit the emergency spark device hidden in her necklace. A small flame appeared. She fed the cloth into it gently, carefully. The fire began to grow. Not much, but enough to warm the small rock space. The alien mother was now completely bare, her skin shaking from the cold, but she sat next to the fire. Curling her body around her child, the heat from the flames touched the child's cheeks. Bringing color back to them, the mother smiled through chattering teeth. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're safe," but she wasn't. She could feel her limbs going numb, her vision blurred, her fingers barely moved. She was giving everything for this tiny life, and she didn't care. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time moved slowly in the cold. The fire was dying, the last cloth burned away. The mother leaned back, her breath shallow, her eyes heavy. Then crunch, a sound in the snow. She didn't have the strength to look. But a voice followed, deep and human, speaking a language she barely understood. "Hey," the voice said, "is someone there?" Another crunch, then another, then silence. She heard the steps stop near her shelter. Then a gasp, shocked and full of worry. "Oh my God," the voice said. Softer now. "A child, she's freezing warm." Arms reached into the space, lifting the child. The mother's eyes fluttered open. And for the first time, she saw him, a human, wrapped in thick gear. A glowing light on his chest. His eyes were wide with fear, but also kindness. He gently placed the child in his coat and wrapped a thermal blanket around her. Then he turned to the mother and paused. She was nearly unconscious, skin pale, lips blue, but she was alive, barely, without hesitation. He pulled off his outer coat and covered her shaking form. Then he spoke, not with words, but with warmth. He held her gently, lifted her from the snow. She didn't fight, she couldn't. But she felt the warmth, the safety in his arms. The human looked down at the small alien woman and whispered, "I've got you. You're not dying tonight." The mother closed her eyes, tears freezing on her cheeks. In the darkest hour, when she had nothing left, when even her own clothes were gone, a stranger from another world had found her, and he chose to help. The wind still howled outside, but in that small rock shelter, hope was born, not from fire, but from a human's heart. Asterisk, the human man moved fast but carefully, The alien child was small, lighter than he expected. The mother was unconscious in his arms, her skin cold as ice. But she was still breathing, even if just barely. He didn't stop to ask questions, didn't care where they came from. All he saw was a mother who gave everything, and a child who still had a chance. His boots crushed the snow as he hurried toward his camp, not far, now just over the ridge. He had built it when he landed a few weeks ago for a solo survey. He never expected visitors, especially not a dying alien mother and her freezing child. At the camp, the heat lamps glowed faint orange. The small power core hummed. He rushed inside the dome and laid them both on the insulated floor. Then he turned up the heat to full and grabbed a thermal blanket from his supply crate. The child shivered, curled up tight. The human wrapped her carefully and placed her near the heat source. Then turned to the mother. He didn't know her species, didn't even know her name. But he knew one thing. She had burned everything to keep her child warm. He checked her vitals with a small scanner, pulse weak, but there, body temp too. Low, but not past saving. He rubbed her hands gently. Then placed a heating pad across her chest. When he touched her cheek, her eyes opened just a little. She blinked slowly, and her lips moved. "Child," she whispered in a soft, strange accent. "She's safe," the human said calmly. "She's warm now, just like you." Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to speak more, but her body was still weak. She only gave a nod and let her eyes close. Again, but this time she wasn't fading. She was resting. The human sat back, letting out a deep breath. "What happened to you two?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. He looked over at the child. She had strange markings on her skin, light blue, with star-like freckles. Her tiny hands gripped the blanket tightly, and when he reached to adjust it, she grabbed his finger. She looked up at him with big, scared eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stared. As if trying to understand him. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." She blinked. Then reached out with both hands and touched his jacket. Then placed her forehead gently against his arm. A quiet thank you in her language. Maybe she just needed to feel someone warm. The human stayed there for a while, watching the firelight dance across the metal walls. The mother's breathing grew stronger. The child finally drifted into sleep. Later, he gave them both nutrient gel, soft, warm, easy to swallow. The mother took only a little, saving most for her daughter, even half-conscious. Her instincts to protect never stopped. Eventually, the mother was awake enough to try speaking. She pointed to herself and said one word, "Via." Then she pointed to her child. "Luma." He smiled, nodding slowly. "I'm Marcus," he replied. "I'm human." Vea struggled to sit up. She looked around the camp, confused but grateful. Then she looked directly at Marcus and asked in broken English, "Why help us? Not your kind." Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked at the child sleeping peacefully beside the fire. Then he looked back at Vea. "Because someone had to," he said simply. "And no one else was here." Vea stared at him, unsure what to say. In her world, kindness like that came with a price. But Marcus offered nothing but warmth and peace. "I lost ship," she said slowly. "Attacked in sky, crash. All gone." "I'm sorry," Marcus said softly. "But you're safe now, both of you." Vea looked down at her burned skin, her bare arms, the blanket he gave her. Then she reached out and touched his chest just for a second, a gesture of thanks and of trust. Marcus reached for his pack. He pulled out a spare set of thermal clothes, not a perfect fit, but better than nothing. "These are yours now," he said, placing them beside her. She touched them gently. Tears returning to her eyes, Luma stirred, waking up slowly. Her eyes landed on her mother, then on Marcus. She crawled over and hugged her mother tight. Then looked up at Marcus and said her first word to him. "Pa," she whispered. Vea gasped. Shocked, that word it meant protector in their language. It was not given lightly, only to those who saved life at great cost. Marcus smiled, but said nothing. He didn't understand the word, but he understood the feeling. He looked at both of them half-dressed, weak, alien, and yet something felt right, like fate had brought them to him. He stood and gently placed more wood into the heater, then looked back at Vaya and Luma and said, "Promise, I'll protect you, no matter what." The wind had calmed by morning, but the forest outside was still frozen and quiet. To quiet, Marcus stood at the edge of his dome shelter, watching the trees. His rifle hung over his shoulder. Ready? Something didn't feel right. The snow should have been full of animal sounds, chirps, crunches, rustling, but there was nothing. Only silence behind him. Vea helped Luma drink warm broth from a small cup. The child still shivered, but her eyes were brighter now. Color had returned to her skin. Vaya had changed into the thermal clothes Marcus gave her, too big. But warm, she still looked weak. But her back was straighter today, her body healing. "Slowly, you rest," Marcus said gently. "I'm going to scan the area." Vea looked at him, worried. "Danger?" she asked. "Maybe." Marcus answered, "I just want to be sure." She nodded. Then whispered, "Come back." He gave a small smile. "I promise." Marcus walked into the snow, boots crunching lightly. He carried a portable scanner in one hand. The screen blinked, showing heat signatures, faint ones. Too faint for comfort. About 200 meters from the camp, he saw it, tracks deep, wide. And not human, clawed feet. Heavy weight, it circled the camp, then disappeared into the trees. Marcus crouched and touched the snow. Still fresh, whatever it was. It had been watching them. He stood quickly, heart thudding. Something was hunting. And it wasn't just animals, it was smart. Back at the camp, Luma played quietly with a small light orb Marcus gave her. Vea watched her with tired but gentle eyes. She turned suddenly as Marcus returned, his face hard. "What wrong?" she asked. "Something's out there," he said, "and it's getting closer." He went straight to work, reinforcing the dome, setting up perimeter alarms. Vea wanted to help, but her hands were still shaking. Still, she stood beside him, watching closely, learning. Luma didn't speak much, but she stayed close to Marcus. Every time he moved, she followed like a shadow. He didn't mind. Hours passed, then the sun dipped behind the snowy hills. The world turned dark and blue again. Marcus sat near the fire inside, his rifle in his lap. Vea and Luma huddled together under one blanket. Marcus didn't sleep. His eyes stayed locked on the scanner screen. Then, beep, 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 the alarm flared red. Something triggered the outer motion sensors. Marcus stood fast, loading his rifle. "Stay inside," he said sharply. Vea grabbed Luma and held her tight. The firelight flickered as he stepped outside. The snow had been disturbed. Big tracks again, closer this time. Then he heard it. A low growl, not far. A shadow moved between the trees, tall and wide. Yellow eyes blinked from the darkness. Marcus raised his rifle and backed toward the shelter. But the thing didn't attack. It just stared, as if thinking, studying him. Then, fast as lightning, it vanished. Marcus swore under his breath. Too smart, too quiet. He returned inside and locked the dome. "Something's watching us," he told Vea. She nodded slowly. "Forest beast," she said, voice low. "Hunts in cold. Waits for weakness." Marcus looked at Luma, curled against her mother. He couldn't let them stay here. They needed to move to higher ground, more visibility, better defense. But moving meant risk, and Vea still wasn't strong. "Tomorrow, we leave," Marcus said. Vea's eyes widened. "Where?" "There's a hill, 3 kilometers east. Rocky top, old cum tower." He paused. then added, "It's our best chance." Vea looked down at Luma, then back at Marcus. "We follow you," she said softly. "You saved us. We trust." That night, the creature returned. This time, it came closer. Marcus heard the heavy breathing just outside the dome. He stood by the door, gun ready, but it didn't attack. Instead, it clawed the metal, gently testing it, then left again. Morning came, and the forest looked peaceful once more, but they knew better now. Marcus helped Vea pack the supplies. He carried the heavier gear and strapped Luma onto his back with a thermal sling. Vea walked beside him, slow but steady. Each step through the snow was hard, but together they pushed forward. Behind them, deep in the trees, Yellow Eyes watched again. Waiting, the hunters were moving, but so was the prey. And the fight for survival had just begun. The climb was harder than Marcus expected. Snow slipped under his boots, and sharp rocks cut through the thin layers of frost. He adjusted Luma's sling on his back. Careful not to jostle her too much, she had fallen asleep against him. Safe and warm, but Vea struggled beside him, each step slow and heavy. Her breathing was rough, but her will was strong. She never let go of her grip on his jacket. The hill grew steeper, and the trees began to thin. The forest opened into a rocky slope, and near the top, they finally saw it, a broken structure half buried in snow. Metal poles stuck out like bones, and a rusty dome still clung to one side of the hill. "The tower," Marcus said, pointing. Vea nodded, weakly smiling. "Safe." "We'll make it safe," Marcus answered. They reached the tower as the sun lowered behind thick clouds. The door was frozen shut, so Marcus blasted it open with a heat charge. Inside, the old cum station was dark, dusty, but still solid. He cleared the entrance quickly and set Luma down on an insulated mat. She woke slowly, rubbing her eyes. When she saw the room, she frowned, but when she saw both her mother and Marcus together, she smiled. Vea sat on the ground, her arms limp. At her sides, her face was pale and her lips cracked. Marcus handed her water and helped her drink. "You should rest," he said. But Vea shook her head. "No rest," she whispered. "Not yet." Marcus checked the room, setting up heat packs and a portable light. The walls groaned under the wind, but they held. He closed the busted doorway with a thermal tarp and snow bricks. Then he placed motion sensors outside, just in case the predator followed. When he returned to the room, Luma was in her mother's lap. They sat quietly by the heat lamp, just holding each other. Marcus watched them for a long moment, then sat down near them, tired and sore. Vea looked at him, then at the firelight. She spoke slowly, choosing her words. "You? Human, yes." Marcus nodded. "Earthborn," he said. "I was sent here for research." Vea blinked slowly. "Why you come? Alone?" Marcus gave a soft laugh. "Didn't plan it that way," he said. "My ship was part of a survey crew, checking for rare minerals." He paused, his voice lower. "A storm hit us hard. I lost contact with the others." Vea's eyes softened. She understood that pain too well. She looked down at Luma, then back at Marcus. "We ran," she said, voice trembling. "My people. They forced me to choose." Her hands shook slightly. "My mate was soldier, strict, cruel. He said no mercy for enemies, not even children." She held Luma closer. "I refused. I took her. I fled." Marcus listened, silent. He could feel her pain in her words. She had given up everything, her people, her safety, her life, just to protect this child. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Doesn't matter what species you are. That's what a parent should do." Vea looked surprised at his words. Then she smiled, small but real. "Thank you," she whispered. The wind howled outside, but inside, the small cum station felt warm for the first time in days. Luma crawled toward Marcus and sat beside him. She looked up at him with those bright, curious eyes. Then, reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stone. It glowed faint blue like a heartbeat. "For you," she said in a tiny voice. Marcus looked surprised. "What is it?" Vaya answered, "Memory stone. It records moments. When someone shows great kindness." Marcus held the stone gently. It was warm, alive, almost. "You sure you want me to have this?" he asked. Luma nodded without hesitation. "You saved us," she whispered. "Now, it saves you." Marcus smiled and tucked the stone into his jacket. "I'll keep it close," he said. Always, the night passed quietly. No alarms, no growls, just the soft sound of breathing. And for the first time, all three slept peacefully. By morning, the sky had cleared. A cold sun peeked through silver clouds. Marcus stepped outside to check the sensors and saw fresh tracks again. But this time, something was different. The creature had come close, but it hadn't tried to enter. It had circled the station, then walked away. He returned inside, thoughtful. Maybe it was testing them. Maybe it sensed something had changed. Or maybe it knew Marcus would protect them. No matter what. The sun rose slowly over the mountain edge. Its light turned the snow into gold, but it gave no warmth. Marcus stood on the old tower roof, staring at the sky, one hand on his visor, the other gripping the damaged antenna, the station's communication system was half frozen and years out of use, but inside, wires still ran clean. Circuits still blinked when powered. There was hope. He turned on his wristpad and scanned the signal strength. Weak, almost dead, but maybe, just maybe, it could work. Via watched him from the broken doorway. She wrapped Luma in the thermal blanket and held her close. The child's eyes were tired, but her spirit was strong. Via looked up at Marcus and asked softly, "Signal help?" "Us." Marcus nodded, eyes focused on the screen. "If I can boost it," he said. "Maybe a passing ship will hear." Maybe was better than never, and that was enough. He climbed down from the roof and stepped back inside. The cold clung to his fingers, but his mind moved fast. He opened a panel on the CUM station wall. Old wires, dust, cracked plastic, but still usable. He pulled out a power converter from his backpack and started connecting it. As he worked, Vea watched closely. She was quiet, thoughtful. After a moment, she whispered, "You fix." Like warrior of peace, Marcus looked up, blinking. "What?" "In our stories," Vea explained, "there is one who does not fight with blade. He fixes what others break. He brings safety, not fear." She touched the side of her head gently. "Most don't believe that story anymore. But I think you are that." Marcus didn't know what to say. No one had ever called him a legend before. He gave a small smile and returned to the wires. Hours passed. Luma slept, her head on Via's lap. Marcus kept working, checking the signal, rerouting power. Then click the CUM tower buzzed. A faint red light blinked once, twice, then turned green. Marcus froze, staring at it. The signal was live. He rushed to the main console, typed in a quick message. "Distress beacon, human survivor with 2 alien civilians. Location marked, need evacuation." He hit send, then sent it again and again. He didn't know if anyone would hear. But the signal was out there now. He turned to Via with a grin. "It's working," he said. "Help might be coming." Via's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth, not trusting her voice. Instead, she reached out and touched Marcus's hand. A silent thank you, full of meaning, but their moment of hope didn't last long. Outside, the sensors beeped. Marcus's wristpad flashed red. Something was approaching fast, big, heavy, and not alone. Marcus stood quickly, grabbing his rifle. He ran to the window and looked down the slope. Shadows moved between the trees. Not one, not two, but many. The predators had returned. And this time, they brought others. Vea stood too, pulling Luma close. "What do we do?" she asked, voice shaking. Marcus looked at the broken door, the thin tarp covering. He looked at the child, the blinking green light. Then back at the forest. "We hold the line," he said firmly. "Until help comes." He set up the last of his traps, pressure charges, sound bombs, and a blinding flare cannon. It wouldn't stop them forever, but it might slow them down. Vea joined him, her legs still weak, but her eyes burning with fire. "I fight too," she said. Marcus nodded. Handing her a stun baton. "You protect Luma," he said. "I'll cover the door." Luma peeked from behind the blanket. She said nothing. But she crawled over and handed Marcus the memory stone again. "Keep this," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "I will." The sun began to set. The shadows grew long and sharp, and then they came. The first creature charged through the trees, fur-black eyes glowing, claws ready. Marcus fired a warning shot, then hit the pressure charge. Boom. Snow exploded into the air. The beast roared and fell back. But more came. 10, maybe more. Climbing rocks, flanking from the sides. Marcus fought hard. Every shot counted. Every second bought them time. Inside, Vea held Luma close. She whispered ancient words into her daughter's ear. Words of strength. Words of love. A flare launched into the sky, lighting up the whole mountain. And in that burning light, a ship appeared. A distant hum grew louder. A rescue shuttle was coming. Marcus saw it, and hope surged through him. He turned back to the creatures. One last stand. Just a little more time. Asterisk, the flare still burned in the sky. But the creatures didn't stop. They were fast, hungry, and angry. Snow flew as they charged up the slope toward the broken station. Marcus fired again and again. His rifle hissed with heat. Each shot hit its mark, but there were too many. Too fast, too close. He gritted his teeth, breathing hard. He had to buy more time, just a little more. Inside the shelter, Vea held Luma close. The child trembled. "Why died?" "Don't be afraid," Vea whispered. "Your mother is still here." She stood, slowly, her hands shaking. The stun baton in her grip felt heavy, but not impossible. She looked at her daughter one last time, then stepped outside into the cold. Marcus turned as he saw her. "Vea, no. Stay with Luma." But she walked forward. Past him, her bare feet touched the snow, but she didn't feel the cold. Her eyes locked on the beasts charging ahead, and something inside her woke up. Not fear, but fire. She let out a cry, not of pain, but of power. Her voice echoed through the rocks. It was not a scream, it was a call. Ancient, strong, almost royal. The creatures stopped for a second, startled, confused, and in that second, Vea leapt. Her legs moved with sudden strength. She slammed the stun baton into the first beast's head. It screamed and fell back, snow spraying in all directions. Another came from the side. Vea ducked and rolled. She grabbed a sharp piece of metal from the ground and threw it. It struck the creature's eye. It howled in pain and backed away. Marcus blinked in shock. Where did that come from? He whispered. Vea turned to him, voice sharp and clear. "I was never weak, Marcus," she said, "but I couldn't fight while holding my child." He smiled and nodded. "Then let's end this." They stood back to back, human and alien. Protecting a child, fighting for each other. More creatures charged together. Marcus and Vea struck them down. Every move was in sync, like they had fought side by side for years. Vea's claws extended slightly. Her species had hidden weapons. Natural defenses. She hadn't used them in years, not since she fled the war. But now she fought with no fear, because her child had someone else to protect her too. Luma watched from the shelter entrance. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She sat still, watching her mother and her protector fight together. Then a new sound, a low hum in the air. Wings slicing through the cold, the rescue ship. A sleek black can-silver shuttle appeared over the treetops, lights flashing, engines roaring. It descended fast, guns out and ready. Marcus raised both arms and fired a flare. The shuttle locked on instantly, and within seconds, beams of blue light shot down, striking the snow near the predators. The creatures scattered, roaring and growling. Some ran, some limped away. The ones that stayed were stunned and pulled back by force fields. The rescue team didn't waste time. The ramp lowered and armored figures jumped out. They ran to Marcus and Vea. Weapons ready, eyes sharp. "We got your signal." One soldier said to Marcus, "We're here to extract." Marcus pointed to the shelter. "There's a child inside." The soldier nodded and rushed in. Another turned to Vea. "You injured?" Vea stood tall. She was covered in snow, cuts, and bruises. But her voice was strong. "No," she said. "I am alive." Marcus walked to her. He looked into her eyes and saw something different now. Not just a mother, not just a survivor, but a warrior who had come back to life. "You did more than survive," he said quietly. "You fought." She touched her chest, right over her heart. "I fight for my child," she replied, "and for the one who stood with me." They stepped onto the shuttle together, Luma in Vea's. Arms holding tightly, Marcus beside them, rifle slung over his back. The ramp closed, the engines roared, and they lifted into the sky, leaving behind the broken station and blood-stained snow. As they flew higher, Marcus looked out the window. The forest grew smaller beneath them. The storm was over. But a new beginning was just starting. He glanced at Luma, now fast asleep in her mother's arms. Then at Vea, her head resting against his shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The rescue ship flew high above the snow-covered forests. Inside, the warmth was gentle, the noise soft. Luma slept peacefully on her mother's lap. Wrapped in a clean blanket, her tiny hands curled under her chin, Vea sat beside her, still and quiet. Her face held no fear now, only calm. Marcus sat across from them, leaning back, eyes half closed. A bandage wrapped around his arm, a reminder of the battle, but it didn't hurt anymore. Not the arm, not the heart. The rescue commander sat down beside him. "We scanned the site you marked," the commander said. "Confirmed predator nest. One of the deadliest on this moon." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, we met them." The commander looked at Vea and Luma. "They weren't part of your team," he said carefully. "Refugees." Marcus didn't answer at first. He looked at Vea, she looked back, then slowly nodded. She saved her child. Marcus said at last, "That's all you need to know." The commander didn't press further. He just said, "They're safe." Now, later, the ship landed on a large outpost above the clouds. A peaceful place, no snow, no predators. Just clean metal halls and sunlight through glass domes. Doctors came to check them all. Luma clung to Vea the entire time. Marcus stayed nearby, always in sight. The outpost workers brought food, warm bowls of stew and sweet fruit drinks. Luma ate quickly, licking her fingers. Vea offered some to Marcus. He smiled and took it. They had gone from firelight and bare survival to a meal at a clean table, and yet something inside Marcus missed the cave, missed the sound of Luma's laughter. Beside the heater, missed Vea's quiet voice telling ancient stories while the wind howled. That night, a diplomat came to speak with Marcus. Official talk rules, reports, alien visitors. But Marcus stopped him mid-sentence. "They're not just visitors." He said, "They're with me." The diplomat raised a brow. "Are you saying you want guardianship?" Marcus nodded without hesitation. "I want to give them a home." Vea stood nearby, listening. She didn't understand every word. But She understood his tone, strong, steady, protective. Later, when the diplomat left, Vea approached him. "You choose us?" She asked softly. Marcus looked at her and smiled. "You chose me first," he said. "When you trusted me with your child," she looked down, blinking fast. Then reached into her coat and pulled out a small silver thread. She tied it around Marcus's wrist slowly, carefully, in her culture. That thread meant a bond stronger than words, a promise without end. Luma ran to them and hugged both their legs. "Pa," she said with a laugh. Marcus picked her up and spun her gently in the air. She squealed with joy. Via laughed to a soft, musical sound Marcus had never heard before. The days passed quickly. Via and Luma were given a small home on the station. But they spent most of their time with Marcus, eating together, walking the sky gardens. Sleeping under the stars behind glass, other aliens on the station gave them strange looks at first. But slowly they stopped, because they saw the way Marcus carried Luma when she was tired. The way Vea stood beside him like a silent guardian. The way they shared food and stories. Like a family. One day Luma fell and scraped her knee. She didn't cry. She looked around and called, "Pa." Marcus ran to her, picked her up, kissed her forehead. She smiled and hugged him tight. Vea watched, her eyes full of something deep. Not just gratitude, but peace. Later that night, Marcus stood at the edge of the viewing deck, stars stretched. Across the black sky, he held the memory stone in his hand. It still glowed soft blue, pulsing like a quiet heart. Vea joined him, standing close. "You gave us your coat, your fire, your strength," she said. "But most of all, you gave us a future." Marcus looked at her. "I didn't know I'd find family out there," he whispered. "But now? I can't imagine life without you too." She smiled and leaned her head against his shoulder, and they stood there in silence. Two survivors, two protectors. One child, one family. No more running, no more freezing nights. No more bare hope, only warmth and a future worth living together.